Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, is directed again by George Lucas, and it's the second installment to the prequel trilogy, starring all the same cast members with the inclusion of Hayden Christenson as Anakin Skywalker and Christopher Lee as Count Dooku.
Now, we're going to assume that everyone has already seen it, considering this movie came out quite a while ago. So, obviously, we're talking spoilers.
The story in Episode 2 is split off into two different directions. One follows Anakin and Padme as they have to get off of Coruscant because Padme is under attack. She's trying to be assassinated, and Obi-Wan Kenobi goes off and tries to discover who's trying to kill Padme. And in doing so, he discovers the clone army that some Jedi has put an order in. And all this mystery starts unraveling, and then eventually we get the Clone Wars. And I honestly thought the story in this one was much stronger than in Episode 1, because in Episode 1 it's just the bad guys blocking trade routes from a planet, and in this one it's an assassination attempt, and then the Clone Wars beginning, and I just find it much more enjoyable than Episode 1.
For me, I completely disagree. I think that the story in this one is a lot weaker as opposed to Episode 1, simply because this one is all about the creepy relationship between Padme and Anakin that's forcefully developed, and the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi going to find her so-called attacker, and then he totally gets distracted and they find out about the clone armies, and it's all just a big build-up to nothing, in my opinion. So,
see, I think that this one is the most important prequel because it starts up all the Clone Wars stuff and gives us all the stormtroopers and everything. And yes, the love story part is enough to make you sick, and it's just awful the way it's handled and performed. Neither actor has chemistry, but in my opinion, the whole Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff is the primary focus of the movie. Yes, the other focus is Anakin and Padme, but the primary focus is Obi-Wan and his mission to discover all this stuff, and I find that very entertaining and fun. Yes, there's not that much action, but the majority of the action takes place in the latter half of the movie. Whereas Episode 1, it's like a lot up front and then a huge gap in the middle and then a lot of action in the end. Episode 2 obviously starts off with some action, but we're doing a lot of comparing because we both have differing opinions on which one is the worst prequel. I think Episode 1 is the worst. She thinks Episode 2.
So in my very honest opinion, I just feel like when I was watching Episode 2, it's just a bunch of filler. Like, let's put Obi-Wan and have him just searching around the galaxy for Padme's attacker. And let's put in a couple of scenes with the development between Anakin and Padme so that Anakin can eventually become Darth Vader. And I'm not really sure if they planned any of it out. I think they just were like, well, let's throw a little of this in there, throw a little of that. Oh, we need some more action, so let's put this in there. And none of it seemed very cohesive, and a lot of it was very boring. Until you get to the Clone Wars, in the battle with the Jedi on Geonosis, when you get the plots start to thicken with Count Dooku and everything. That's great, but I think they should have been doing that the whole time. And there's many other options they could have done, but in terms of all of it, the execution was just horrible. The story was not interesting enough to keep me interested, and I was creeped out, and all of the cool things, like I said, with Obi-Wan Kenobi was just completely watered down, and I just rolled my eyes at the relationship between Padme and Anakin.
See, I think the way I see it is with Episode 2, they tried to fix all their mistakes that they made in all the past movies, including with Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi, because Boba Fett went out like a punk. He got hit on accident by Han Solo in the back, and then he ends up falling in the Sarlacc pit. That's how he dies. So they were like, you know what, we need to fix that. Let's put Jango Fett in this movie and make him cool. And they made him cool. I thought he was a really good character, and he actually had an honorable death. He was beheaded by Mace Windu, one of the most powerful Jedis in the whole Star Wars universe. They also fixed Jar Jar Binks. They gave him way less screen time, way less lines, because Jar Jar Binks was the worst part of Episode 1. And that's saying a lot, because young Anakin was really bad too. And they tried to fix that with an older Anakin, but Hayden Christensen's acting just didn't work that well. And a lot of Anakin's characteristics and mannerisms were based on Mark Hamill's performance as Luke Skywalker in Episode 4, A New Hope, because he's kind of whiny, and that's how Anakin is portrayed in this movie. And when I first saw it, I was annoyed by it, but after seeing it a dozen other times, it kind of makes sense, because like father, like son, they both complain a lot, and they both feel like they deserve more. A lot of the character development doesn't work, especially with the love story. But all the Obi-Wan stuff, to me, again, it still works, because you get the Obi-Wan versus Jango Fett, you get the asteroid fight scene, or the flight scene, rather, and that part was really exciting, because most of it is just sound design, and oh my goodness, that scene alone, I would say that's better than the pod racing scene, but some might disagree. And the characters were a little bit better in this movie. Yoda was not a puppet. They fixed that, because the puppet Yoda from Episode 1 was awful, and they fixed him, put him in the CGI, and they gave the main villain more to do than to just be a fighter. While I loved Darth Maul, Count Dooku was a slightly better, more complex villain.
And see, I thought they tried to develop way too many characters in this one movie. You have Count Dooku, who only has a few lines in this, really, honestly. You have this bounty hunter, not Jango per se. I like how they developed his character, and then you get Boba Fett. But again, that's such a small fraction of the movie, and it doesn't make up for all of the other horrible things, like the gladiator scene with the 3 creatures. I didn't like that at all. I thought it was unnecessary, and it was just a way for them to be like, we have to put them in danger so they can get back together. The other bounty hunter, Changeling, it's like they spent so much time on her, and then they just kill her off, and you're just kind of like, okay, I won't follow that character anymore. And with Anakin, his character and Padme's character in this are just so flat. I mean, I understand the deep motivations that Anakin has with his feelings for Padme, and also his conflicted feelings about his mother. But I just don't feel like they're consistent with Darth Vader, and it doesn't really naturally lead into him becoming Darth Vader, in my opinion. So I think that was a huge, huge disappointment to me. To contrast all of my complaints about the other characters, though, I do think that Padme shows a lot of similarities with Princess Leia, which is where she came from. She's got that, if you're not going to handle it, I will kind of attitude, and she's a go-getter and that kind of thing. But again, if she's that smart, why would she ever be with Anakin in the first place?
Yeah. I think that they should have played the love story off more to the sense that she's more in love with him than he is in love with her, because he's trying to be focused on being a Jedi. And that's where I think it all went wrong, is they really should have started the whole prequel trilogy with Episode 2, with more of the story of Episode 2, to have Episode 2 really be just about the Clone Wars.
But I was also very disappointed with Obi-Wan's character development. Especially in that one scene when they're at the bar and they're trying to hunt down this bounty hunter that had just tried to poison Padme. And Obi-Wan is basically making Anakin do all the work, and he's like, let's just do this at the bar because that happens on Tatooine in Episode 4. And I'm going to drink the blue milk and do mind control on somebody because that's what happened in the other one. And he's kind of a jerk about it. And you're like, that's not the Obi-Wan I know. And I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the complaints I have about this movie.
Well, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the characters. In particular, like you said, Anakin as Darth Vader. In the original trilogy, you don't see Anakin Darth Vader as a victim, and in the prequel trilogy, it all really started from episode 1. They try to make him the victim of circumstance instead of just succumbing to the dark side and just, being hateful and just gladly going to the dark side. And then, obviously, like you said, Obi-Wan just kind of being a jerk. I mean, he was kind of a sassy old man in episode 4. Like, I don't grow owning a droid and type of stuff. But a lot of it was more just fan service in this movie with the callback to the cantina, Jango Fett and Boba Fett.
And the excuse to add in more Star Wars creatures with the gladiator scene. That's all I felt it was, hey, we need some more cool creatures. Let's put them in there.
That was just kind of a way for them to show off. And yes, the CGI in this movie is way better than in episode 1. But that's hard to say because it came out 3 years later. And it's kind of an unfair comparison to make.
And see, I thought that it's a little worse in episode 2 than in episode 1, because in episode 1, you have Jar Jar, who's very much CGI, and you have most of the Gungans that are CGI, but they actually look natural in that environment. I thought in terms of CGI that they just bit off a lot more than they can chew with episode 2 in terms of the massive Clone War scene. Most of the clones are all CGI, and it just, you can tell. With the creatures, the rhinoceros type creature, his texture was really cool. The green praying mantis type guy, he was all right. The other one, his fur was a little off, and the way he moved was just odd, and I don't think it quite fit very well. The other thing is on Geonosis, all the bugs are CGI, they don't look natural. All the robots being made in the assembly line do not look natural. The scene with Anakin and Padme running through the assembly line just looks unnatural. And there's just a lot of things in this that just don't seem to fit up. And if I can contrast it with what you're saying with comparing it to episode 1, I think episode 1 was much better because they at least took the time in that one scene when Jar Jar gets his hand stuck in the pod racer. That's an actual hand that's makeup and practical effects.
Yeah.
And they didn't do as much CGI in that one, and what they did do looks a lot more natural in terms of the robots and the battle and the blue shield generator things. I think it looked a lot better than in the second one.
Yeah. I can definitely agree with you on the fact that they had an over-reliance on CGI. I mean, even in episode 1, they had an over-reliance on CGI, just a little bit. But episode 2 is where it just started going, they just went crazy. Everything was on a blue or green screen. I don't think there's one shot where there isn't a special effect in it. And that's sad, because, the prequel, or the original trilogy, everything pretty much had to be practical. And that was only because of the limitations on technology. What I appreciate about episode 2 is they did push the bar and they did do things that had never been done before in terms of Star Wars movies, because yes, in episode 1 they had the double-bladed lightsaber, which was awesome, but then they kind of took it to another level where they just showed an army of Jedi, and that was awesome to see. You see all those lightsabers lighting up. This is the first time we ever saw a purple lightsaber with Mace Windu. That was awesome. And honestly, I think that starting at the arena scene, I don't remember how long it is. It's like 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes of just like non-stop action. And that's what I love about this movie. It's the start of the Clone Wars, and it goes and goes and goes until the very end. It's like, boom, here you go. But that's why I wish that this had been the first one, because then we would have had more focus of an entire live-action movie of the Clone Wars.
I will say, however, that even though episode 2 is my definite least favorite Star Wars movies, it does have one of my absolute favorite scenes where Yoda fights Count Dooku. because not only do you see Christopher Lee with a lightsaber, which is pretty awesome, but then the character Yoda that you know and love and who's like the old grandfather Jedi that you grew up with actually gets to fight, and you're like super excited about it. And I thought it was really cool. But again, it was so short. Wasn't satisfying enough.
And I felt the same way about that asteroid scene. I wanted more from it. While it's awesome, and I love the fact that there's no music until the very end of that scene, because the sound design is amazing, especially with those like sonic charged booms or whatever they are. Those were awesome. But I wanted so much more. It reminded me of Empire Strikes Back with the Millennium Falcon flying through the asteroid field, but done better because it's done much later in time. You know, it's been, 30 years almost, if not more. So it's kind of an unfair comparison again, but it's so cool, and that is something to appreciate about this movie is they give you enough, but not too much in the sense of some of those action scenes where it's like, oh man, I wanted more. So maybe you just go back and rewatch it or something. Maybe that was their plan all along. Yeah. Probably not though.
But again, I think that in terms of, and not just to say that we want them to be all fan-based, but I mean, that's why Star Wars is so popular, and I think they just let a lot of people down in this movie.
So as you know, we are movie lovers, and we also love movie trivia, and there's this game called Popcorn Trivia that we've been playing recently, and you can download it on your Android or Apple mobile device, and you can play by yourself in solo mode, or you can play against your friends in multiplayer mode.
So Mike and I challenged each other to Star Wars Episode 2 quiz on Popcorn Trivia, and of course, I beat him by 10 points, getting 284 points, and he only got 274.
And we want to know what you guys can get. Can you beat our scores? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to download this game, guys. It's a lot of fun. You can customize your own avatar. You can choose from hundreds of movies. In fact, every Friday on New Movie Friday, they release a new quiz from a movie from the theaters and a regular old movie that's been released for quite a while, and sometimes even a TV show. So be sure to check out Popcorn Trivia.
And test your movie knowledge. I think basically you already know my thoughts. Overall, this movie, it wasn't my favorite. I liked it because it was Star Wars, and you have that little bit of Yoda, and you got, the setup of the clone armies and some really cool parts. But for the most part, I was just very disappointed, rolling my eyes through basically the entire thing. And so I give Episode 2 a C-.
Wow. See, I feel not completely different from her, but quite different, because I enjoyed this one way more than Episode 1. Almost more than Episode 3. It's hard to compare them. We need to watch Episode 3 soon. But there's just so much going against this movie with the terms of the love story and Jar Jar Binks being in it still, and he plays an integral role still. But the fact that they did try to fix certain aspects of Episode 1 and previous installments of the Star Wars franchise, I gotta award their efforts at least, and some of it was pulled off, in my opinion, quite well. So I gotta give Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones a B. It only slightly edges out Episode 1, but it's still, in my opinion, a superior film.
Alright, so what did you guys think of Star Wars Episode 2? Did you like it, love it, or hate it? Let us know in the comment section below.
And we are going to be doing our Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith review next week. Yeah, we did fall behind just by a week. So be on the lookout for that video next week. But if you like this one, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button so you can be notified of when we upload new content. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.